I'm here to ask for money. Please send us money. Yeah, it's Friendship Month here, so we can use any donations and it would be very helpful. If you're watching this video, you probably know why it's helpful. Send money. Yeah, that's it. Here's Sokuzan.
This evening's Dharma talk is titled A Guided Meditation. I don't know if I've given a talk on that, or even though I've given a few instructions on that, this was one I'd like to do as a talk so that we can have questions and answers, hopefully answers about it. So we'll start out by, even though you're those in the Zendo here are not facing the wall, just whatever's in front of you, you can drop your gaze slightly so you're not looking off into space. Look at someone's back if there's one in front of you, or if there's nothing in front of you, your gaze can be off the tip of your nose down towards the carpeting. Hands in cosmic mudra, left over right with the thumb slightly touching. And if this causes, sometimes this position causes some issues with people's backs. So you can always do resting the mind mudra, which is this one. This is fine. This is the issue I have a little bit with this is one we can do just any time you might be sitting this way. This is one you rarely will do casually. So there's a very definite kind of intention after you've done this a few thousand times to just come down. It's a way of connecting these two polarities together, heaven and earth, right here. So this particular way that I'm going to talk about meditation guiding you is actually a contemplation. A meditation doesn't really have the kind of so-called objectivity, or it's not as filled with objects. That's more about a contemplative approach, and you can split hairs over that or not. It doesn't matter. So, but let's call this a guided meditation. I'm going to show you how a way. That's why it says a guided meditation. There are other ways. Probably best to do this on your own rather than be guided. On the other hand, you need to start somewhere. So we'll start with one bell and we'll end with two bells. And after the first bell, we'll wait a few minutes or seconds, and I'll begin to talk, and then I'll allow space, and then I'll talk some more, and I'll allow space, and for whatever length of time it comes out to, you could follow my suggestions about how to work with what is occurring in your mind. Here we go. Hold the body very still. Back very straight. Eyes either straight forward on an object that is not moving or cast down towards the floor. Whatever is moving, just observe. The diaphragm is moving, the air is coming and going. Don't necessarily cling on to anything, the breath, the diaphragm. Just watch what moves. Observe what moves. You could do this for an entire period, just observing whether it's thoughts, smells, tastes, content of sounds or of feelings. or of what you are seeing. Just observe. So we're going to do a little bit of focus on how the body feels. This is a sense of touch. As you focus on that feeling, go towards the actual feeling of what is brought about through gravity, how the clothing feels on the body, sense of touch, physical form, nerve endings on the skin, and so forth. Just observe. See that form, which is that feeling, which is the object that arises in consciousness. Now that your awareness is on that form, now expand that to see, if you can, the space in which that feeling occurs. See if there's a sense of space, whether it's actual space or the thought about space, your interpretation of space, doesn't matter. Don't necessarily make it too complicated. Very simply, the space and the feeling arising in the space, sense of touch or body. Anything else that comes along, anything that tags along and tries to get your attention, don't resist it, don't join it, don't ignore it, if you can. And if something else occurs, then just observe that. No special agenda other than awareness, observing. Now go to that area where thoughts arise and come and go, the sixth consciousness, as it's traditionally called, and just observe thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, coming and going. And no comment, no addition, unless additions happen spontaneously. That's fine too. And as we did before, with this object or thought arising in that particular consciousness, see if you can see the space around the thought patterns or shapes, memories, evaluations. See if there's a space in which those things arise, or if they arise and you can't see any space. Maybe what is there you wouldn't call space. This is an interesting area to see the way concepts point at something that is not a concept. This is called awareness. Now we do the same thing with the sense of smell. There is incense burning in the room, at least here. But you can also just tune into or sense through that olfactory sense the humidity in the room that you are in, the temperature. might even be a little stuffy, but something that you can bring your mind to, your consciousness to. And as we go through these various sense consciousnesses, you can also notice what happens to the thinking process. See if it's trying to join in and explain what you're smelling. Describe it, give it a name. Just be aware of it. No prevention, no advancement, no closed doors. Just this. Now we go to this sense of taste. And notice what happens to the other sense fields when we focus on one of them. They shut down somewhat, but they may try to contribute a little bit. Do the senses overlap? Taste. Taste of saliva, aftertaste of tea, coffee. Something is happening there as an object of consciousness, even though it's very, very subtle when you're not eating something. It's still there. Very discreet in some ways and not so discreet in others. Sense of taste. See the space around. See if there's a way in the consciousness of flavor or lack of flavor. See if there's a space in which that occurs. See if there's anything in the space of awareness other than that particular kind of sense object. Is there an overlap? And now let's go to the sense of hearing, and I'll give you something to hear. Notice the space around that sound. When the sound diminishes, does the space change? Did you even notice space? Was the space arising as a concept about space? Or was it arising as the complement to the object of sound in the first place? Was it different from that or the same? Were you able to discriminate anything at all other than thoughts about it? Now, when I say move, I want you to bring your right hand up in front of your eyes and about 6 or 8 inches away, and just look at the palm of your hand and notice if what is being received, what you are seeing through the eye visual consciousness, has space other than the space in which the hand is moving. Is there space within consciousness that is similar, the same, or different? Go. I return. So those sense fields are similar in that they all have a kind of object, similar in that they all have a kind of space in which the object occurs. And they are different in that the shape, form, frequency, or vibration of each one of those forms has quite a distinct personality. So another way that we can work with this is something that I call alternating sense awareness practice, ESAP. And that allows us to go between receiving one particular sense object and going to another one. And this does something to affect the thought process and the way thoughts, emotions, memories, concepts, ideas, judgments are received and the way they're produced. To see the difference between production and receiving is important, not by way of value, but by way of contrast. So I'll start this out as a guided alternation, and then I will stop guiding, and you can do your own alternation, changing to some other sense or some other frequency or rhythm. Experiment with that a little bit yourself and see what happens in the sense fields, the whole sensorium. So let's start out with sense of touch, how the body feels, gravity, clothing hanging on our limbs, the temperature of the body, various discomforts, or for that matter, comforts in the body position. Might be a little ache or pain somewhere, which is included. Just observe. And when I say move, then go from the body awareness to the sense of hearing. So right now, body awareness. Move to hearing. Now move to seeing. Now move to smelling. Now move to tasting. Now move to thinking. Now move to feeling, body awareness. Now to seeing. Now to feeling. Now I'll just say one word, and you will move your consciousness back and forth. Seeing, hearing, seeing, feeling, seeing, feeling, seeing, feeling. Notice if any thought processes are entering this that are complicating the situation. Not wrong. This is not incorrect. That's extra. We're just talking about what is moving, seeing, feeling. Are there thoughts? Is there something else? Seeing, color, shape, texture, feeling, texture, weight, temperature. Now do some of that on your own. Alternating sense awareness practice. So when we first start meditating, no matter who we are, pretty much the first time we start doing that, it's always kind of a contemplation. We sit down, we hold still, and we try to see what this is about. Notice our thoughts coming and going. Try to understand, even though we might have been given definite instructions on what to do. Sometimes there's quite a bit of contrast as far as what we're actually experiencing. So right and wrong is kind of beside the point here. What we're trying to do is train our mind not to just calm down, although that could be part of it, but basically to see what's the fundamental issue here, rather than here's the symptom of what can we do to soften it, calm it down, and make it go away or be mind. Might be more challenging, but fundamentally more radical to go right to the root of what this is. That could take a long time. You've been here a long time. You're going to be back, more than likely. So these are just some exercises that not all that new, taught in different places, just my version of it, to actually work with the sense fields so you emphasize the objective quality of each one of the sense fields so that you understand the way consciousness is working in each one of those. Much more clear about if you can see the space within the room, space within the mind of the mind stream, to see how this functions. Seeing how it functions will be more helpful in what is called the long run, rather than fighting with it, trying to stop it, manipulate it, push it down, meditate it away, or become a great meditator. Some meditation practices are aimed towards becoming, resting in tranquility. Practice quite a bit of that. I'm not in disagreement with it. If that's what you need to do, then do that. But you could try shikantaza, which is basically holding the body still and observing, simply put. when you're doing this, you can also do this. You can actually do anything that's happening in any of your sense fields is fair game. You can actually, it's moving. Your breath is moving. Your diaphragm's moving. The issue that I have sometimes is to encourage people to not fixate on something to try to create artificial stillness. And this is taught all over the place. So don't be surprised if you're surprised. Any questions?
I think I've heard you in a lot of instructions when you talk about cosmic mudra. You explain it as it's not something we do casually. I'm wondering why, or what is it about that, because it's not something we do casually, that's emphasized?
The reason I emphasize it, and one is I didn't do it for 20, 30 years. I did this, and then I began doing this. And so it's not like I prefer this. It's just I teach this way because I think this is okay, but it's more casual, even though it's symmetrical. I think this is very distinctly putting, just like in the figure of the Buddha Rupa that's carved wood. It's and it doesn't matter if it's this way or this way. We do left over right because the right hand is usually the active one, and we're putting the left, which is inactive, over the top. Thumbs touching forms an oval. There's some symbolism there, but the idea is you wouldn't probably do that casually unless you meditate a lot. And if you meditate a lot, then you find yourself doing this quite a bit casually because it's just part of your body-mind complex. So the idea is to sit, because body and mind are two aspects of the same thing, but not fundamentally separate. We find that part of our body-mind complex, which is the body. You don't have a lot to say so about the mind, although sometimes people go in and try to count the breath or label thinking. I've done a great deal of that. I don't teach it generally. On occasion, I'll teach it specifically. But this, I emphasize this because I just think it's symmetrical, it's simple, it's easy to do, but I also have a few people who have problems in the back of their neck if they sit like this for any length of time. And I've said you can just do this, or you could put a pillow under your hands, which is sometimes done. Put a cushion so your hands are not pulling down on your neck. More about that? Yeah.
Is there something about that that's more conducive in a certain way?
Just because it's your body. And if I go like this, this is happening in my consciousness also. So this is happening in my consciousness. So you're addressing body, speech, and mind through positioning the body. Just like if you were to do mantras, you're using the connection between the body and mind, which is speech, to address that. Just another way of training the mind. Right and wrong are extra. We don't need those. Some people might need to do mantra practice. Might be better for them to do that practice. So I teach that depending on what I understand the person is dealing with. So sit like this. And also, it's uniform. We all wear black. There's nothing magical about black. I could just say, well, let's all red. We're red now. And then I could say, I didn't say magenta. I said red. I mean, there would always be some arbitrariness, even with black, rather than all black. Just really dark colors, dark blue, dark black, or dark gray is good, so that there's less so-called differentiation, personality happening there. I think it's just helpful. If you're sitting here and you've been sitting, somebody walks in with a bright red shirt on, it's you could say, well, that's a teaching, so, or not. Or you could say, no, that's a person that's colorblind.
Can we observe receiving?
Mm-hmm. So you can flash on it. You can notice that you've been open. Usually when you notice receiving, you've just shut down because you're concluding something. I'm receiving. But you can do it in a flash. You can just notice it and then drop that and be back into receiving again. It's alternation of sorts. More? There's another question. Yes.
At one point during the meditation, you asked us if our thoughts were interfering, and you said, not that that's right or wrong, but just to notice. And I was wondering about what I guess more what you meant by are your thoughts interfering with the observation of the senses?
Yeah. That's exactly what I meant. Are you sensing that you can't stop thinking? You're working with a sense of smell, but you have a lot of discursive thought wandering around in there. Did you sense interference? Or you might have not. You might say, no, it wasn't interfering. I noticed I was thinking, but it didn't seem to be interfering. So that's what I was referring to more.
Can you register the first 5 senses without thought?
I think so. Yes,
Did you know that you were registering them?
with practice.
What would be registering them that wasn't a thought?
Thank you for that question. I'm looking at you, I can just see this without knowing what it is. You can actually do this. All of you can do it. You can see the most separative of all the sense consciousnesses, of the 5 sense consciousnesses, is seeing. It's the one that seems like things are over there. The mind is even more threatening. That's why we have paranoia sometimes, because we don't know if things are over there or in here. Especially when we start to realize that we've been projecting onto the world ideas about the world that are actually our own mind. It can be quite irritating or embarrassing. So a sense of all the other senses, but other than mind, are more intimate. A sense of sound, you can sometimes if you hear a sound, you might not be sure where it's coming from. You know it's not in your mind unless you have tinnitus or something. Or you can sometimes, maybe all of you experienced suddenly hearing your name called. Anybody experienced that? Yeah. You know who that is, don't you? God. I think it's pronounced God. So no, we don't know for sure what that is. People could speculate. I'm not interested in speculation, but I am interested in how that feels, what that's like. So sense of seeing has the most distance to it, and the sense of hearing has some distance, but it's more something that we're having more. It's more intimate in the sense of taste. Obviously, smell is extremely intimate, and the sense of touch, very intimate. So those areas are. It's interesting the way those overlap, underlap, and so on. But you can actually feel something without thinking, without having thoughts about it. It's not simple. It's not just something you can immediately do. You would have to work with that in much the same way that I'm talking about here. You don't have to do this practice. It's just a suggestion. You can sit down and just receive. But if you have difficulty with receiving, then you could go through something that is already the case. Gravity is not something you're creating. It's actually, insofar as relative truth is real. You are sitting on your cushion and you are experiencing gravity. So you could say it's grounding, as Trungpa Rinpoche used to emphasize quite a bit. It's very grounding, you're grounded. So staying with that grounded feeling is important. Even the Buddha with the Sparsha Mudra, when he was challenged by the daughters of Mara upon his awakening, apparent awakening, they came and said, "Yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. You haven't realized anything. What's your proof?" And then he touched the earth and said, "This earth is my witness." Pretty straightforward sentence. He actually owned the earth in the sense that he wasn't separated from anything. So go ahead.
Is the differentiation of the senses coupled with time? Perception of time?
The illusion of time. The illusion that things are moving through time. That there's things happening in a time reference. Yes.
Can we perceive time with any sense other than thought?
It looks like we can somewhat, but we just about need the thought process to validate it, to second the motion, so to speak. If you watch image I'd like to use, you're looking at a stream flowing, and you see a leaf fall out of the tree, or a couple of them fall into the stream and float by you. It's just the same thing as this second hand on a clock moving. So that's we've taken that movement and put it into something that's very cyclic and imitates the movement of the planets around and around the moon, going around phases of the moon. So it's happening. I mean, it's not that it's some kind of illusion in the fundamental sense that it's some kind of ghost or something, but it's unreal in the sense that we attribute to it, because it's always now. It never leaves. There's no then in the past, and there's no then in the future. It's always this moment. And the thought process will mix up a lot of things to fill it in, to give us some kind of feeling like, well, yeah, I'm doing this, and I'm working on my graduate degree, and then I'm going to move to Utah and become a squirrel biologist. Yes, go ahead.
If you can just see without knowing what you're looking at, what's going on in the conceptual mind?
Not much. Other than you could have some kind of a sense of humor could be happening there. You can realize how seriously everybody's taking everything. And part of the reason they're taking it so seriously because of the suffering and because of the fear of things going awry, the fear of being threatened, the fear of the body being threatened, the fear of the things we own being threatened, the fear of running out of money, running out of food, running. The fear, because there's such a imputed belief that we are just this physical situation, which is slowly getting older and older. That doesn't mean that goes away. It just means you see a bigger picture. Yes.
Whose fear is that?
Fear is having the fear, but it looks like somebody. And at some point, the one who is having the fear and the fear itself collapse into one another, just to say it very literally. And then they collapse into the space in which they originally occurred. So there you've got some transitions happening. But it's just a way of talking about it. Fundamentally, nothing happens. That's why it's called Buddha nature. You return to your original face before your parents' birth. You have to talk about it somehow, so we use these kind of funny kind of Oriental expressions. Go ahead.
If nothing happens yet, you say that you can see without knowing what's in front of you, then it seems like something's changed.
Yeah.
Did you?
It does seem like it. It's an illusion. Go ahead. Seems like a movie is real. It's not. Pardon me.
A question from Don in Virginia.
Yes, Don.
He asks, is Shikantaza an entrance to Buddha nature?
Sure. Yes. Sit down, hold still, observe, and observe what moves until it doesn't.
Talk about contrast being important when being guided through a meditation like this. Everything often blurs together, and I have a hard time seeing the contrast between senses, even when I'm intentionally going back and forth.
I have a response unless you have a question.
Go ahead.
That's awareness. That's actually showing you the nature of your confusion. You looked at it and you came to a conclusion about that you didn't. You said, I have a hard time. So that means you were setting up some kind of idea about how that should look. It did not match up to that. So you drew a conclusion that you weren't understanding that in the way that should be, that I meant it, or that you thought it should happen or something. More?
What do you mean by contrast then?
The contrast between, you said, what was your statement? You said, did you say confused, or what was the word you used?
Just that it all blurs together.
Well, blurs is confusion. What was very, very specific, you're adding something onto that. The blurriness you're creating. The concreteness of what was said was very simple and direct. There wasn't any deep conceptual thing happening, nothing, just smell, taste, touch, or feeling, seeing, hearing. Very, very simple. Yet the mind comes in and fools around with that. It doesn't want that kind of simplicity, that kind of directness. Awakening, if there is such a thing, is extremely direct and simple. More?
Is the blurriness not direct?
The blurriness, what you're saying, the blurriness is a concept or conclusion about what is arising in consciousness. So it has a directness to it in that it looks blurry. So it's direct in that way, but it's indirect in that it is a conclusion about what is being observed. So you looked at it and you felt that it was blurry. You felt like you weren't seeing it, or you somehow came up with a conclusion that it's blurry or not clear. I'm not sure what this is, or what should I be doing here? Or I'm not sure what else you would say about it, but it's still awareness. You're aware of blurry. Still awareness. Do you think you're doing it wrong? Do you? Yeah. More?
What does contrast look like before our idea of what contrast should look like?
So it could show up different for each person, but it's just very simple. It's just a black and white or gray and red. It's just a simple situation with nothing that doesn't point to something else. Just simple and direct. Just this. More.
Is there something different that is seen in a more formless meditation where we're not being guided, we're just looking at the wall?
Yes. No contrast. But it's not something you can conclude. So therefore it doesn't, in Egoville, that doesn't spend. It has no currency there, because in the world of right and wrong and up and down, back and forth, the 8 worldly dharmas, there's no Buddha nature can't, or some understanding that is, or wisdom doesn't show up as a thing, so it has no currency there. More. Good. I mean, good questions. Michael.
You said something about see if the sense fields overlap.
Mm-hmm.
What did you mean by overlap?
Well, see if they have some kind of a distinct or discrete separation from each other. Like some of them are mixed together much easier than others, like smell and taste. But they're definite consciousnesses. So that was just saying, when you notice if the one you just left, or if you're going back and forth, notice if there's some kind of overlap or underlap or mixing together of that. Doesn't need to be. I'm not saying look for that and see if you can't discover that or make that happen. I'm just saying, just notice that. So when I say that, the idea there is to encourage your awareness to look more into contrasts. So if I said that, then you may, unless you're daydreaming about something else, you may actually look at the 2 senses and see if there's, because when you do that, you notice it's hard to tell what they are. It's hard to tell them apart. Questions? You
mentioned when you put your hands together, heaven and earth. What's the significance of heaven in that context?
It's just a kind of the metaphor for like in Ikebana or Brahmanic awareness practice, bringing together this grounded situation and aspiration or heaven, bringing those together in this. There's another way. It's just, I don't know where it came from. It just showed up as I was talking. I'm sure I didn't make it up. Maybe it doesn't even work. Huh?
The earth, then? What is that part?
You're just here. You're just solid. You're on the earth. It's like when Buddha reached down and touched the earth. Sparsha Mudra. This earth is my witness. He was addressing, to use that metaphor, he's just talking to the daughters of Mara, his own confusion. Says, you're not going to scare me out of this. This earth is my witness. It's a pretty big witness.
when our hands come together in heaven and earth, the body mind position for that, what does that do to what happens in the consciousness?
Find out. This is, you're sitting and you're not sitting like this, you're not sitting like that, you're not casual. Nothing wrong with this. I mean, go to lunch, have a picnic, play rugby. You can find a rug. So we take this kind of position. This, as Togen says, this is the Buddha. He's not saying this is the Buddha, he's saying this is the Buddha. Much easier than saying this is the Buddha.
How does the human part play into it then?
I'm following you, but you're going to have to say more than
Well,
that.
if it relates, say, to the ikebana or art, or in that sense,
So
if you bring heaven and earth together, and then
Yes.
what represents human?
the human being is the one who does that, brings heaven and earth together, brings like the ikebana, the earth is the rocks and the vase or the container, and then the tall plants, leaves or branches going up into the sky, and then this flower here is the represent man or a woman or human being. The same thing with the brush and ink awareness practice. You're here and you bring heaven down to earth, and you could do that in your everyday life all the time.
Do you do that when you give a Dharma talk?
I don't do anything. When I say I don't do anything, I don't know what I'm doing.
Is there an aspect though of the heaven?
You're awful
and
nosy. Go ahead.
Is there an aspect though of the heaven earth?
Yes.
That happens?
Yeah, and I understand your question. I don't mean to be mocking you, but I'm saying that you would have to see what that is. If I say what it is literally, I would say the only way I can say it as functioning as a person here is saying I don't get in the way of what's coming forward. If I did, then I would be more of a conventional teacher. I'd be teaching out of knowledge, information, judgment, evaluation, right and wrong. And I'm not saying that doesn't show up, but that's not how it looks over here.
You said that we can bring that heaven, earth, and main principle. We could maybe do that in our daily life.
So the practice is to do it with ikebana, to do it with in your living situation. You would have to come up with the metaphors for it there. This is very, very simple. And, when you sit down, hold still, you're actually doing that. You look at the wall, it's just your beingness. Now, it might be all kinds of rumbling around with your particular style of neurotic behavior or pluses and minuses going on, but you're just there. You just allow that to occur without jumping up and running out or going and call your therapist. Or you just allow that to occur. Yes.
The idea of creativity comes up. Is there a way to be creative that's not a production?
Say more.
Just reflecting on how you said that you just don't get in the way of it. And it seems like, or just what comes up to me is like that shoe rack out there. Just the situation just kind of showed up and it kind of was different than the way that you drew it, different than the way that we were looking at it. It kind of just became a different thing.
No, that's exactly what I meant. You thought you did that by yourself? You didn't realize I was connecting heaven and earth? And you were the gopher? No, of course, that's what I mean. I mean, there's a sense of creativity, a sense of bringing things together, the elements of something, with some kind of in that sense, a pragmatic goal of trying to make a rack that will accommodate shoes during the retreat, so we don't have them all over the entryway floor for people to trip over. So that, and then just all things coming together. And then, you and I talked about it. I made a sketch. You went a different direction, but it worked better than what I had drawn. So I'm not sure what. Yes.
Seems like there's a polarity in a way that you present production and receiving. And I was wondering how that situation relates to when you talk about production.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. So receiving would be just to look at the situation, receive what needs to be done, receive in a pragmatic sort of way. You're kind of inventing something there that will fulfill a particular function. So you need to be really receptive about how that's going to be for anybody, for you or anyone else coming in there, and how that's going to. So there's a lot of receiving has to happen, and if you set up any kind of arbitrary, time frame, sometimes you have to have a time frame. You can't help it. Like the retreat's coming up in 3 days, so that's what happens every 1st of every December. So a good idea to have that done, but not required. That wasn't done. We just trip over the shoes like we've always done. So it just comes together because of all the different elements, people that helped you with it, going to get material, talking to me about it, just causes and conditions. There's some planning going on, but it's not super tight. In some situations, if you're building a skyscraper, you'd have to be pretty tight about how to do that because there's so many variables, speed of the wind, gravity, how much it has to shift to the wind to keep from just busting in half. There's just so many things to consider, more detailed kind of engineering. A lot more moving parts, so to speak, or a lot more hidden parts that we're just not really sure about. Go ahead.
So can we create without producing?
Fundamentally, that's the only way you can truly create. Fundamentally. Keep coming. When I say truly create, I'm saying actually, bring down lightning. If there's anybody there, you're going to get burned.
Don from Virginia has another question.
Yes.
He asks, when I just sit and don't judge my thoughts or wanting to do, is this taking responsibility?
Could be. It's the ability to respond just means whatever happens, just respond, just observe, just respond. Responding is not adding, not pulling, not pushing, not doing anything with it. If you're just responding to it, then if anything needs to be done because you don't have a big agenda about it, then you won't miss that opportunity. If you were, say, I'm of course not a surgeon, but if you were a surgeon and you're inside someone's body and you're trying to work with their bypass surgery or something like that, that's very, very dangerous. You cannot make mistakes in there. You could kill somebody. You kill them. So to go in there and be very, very on receive all the time because of the completely unpredictable nature of anything, especially human bodies. And be ready, you could say, have so much receiving at the same time you're producing what you need to do, but you better have a whole lot of receiving going on so that you don't get too, shall we say, I think it's very subtle, but I can't think of another word, a little bit too overconfident about what you're doing and start to act out of your, well, I got this handled. Little miniature flakes of arrogance showing up around somebody is so good. They've had so much approval. They've had so much success. And when it comes time for that cycle, when transiting Mars and transiting Saturn or crosses over Pluto, you might have a little bit of difficulty with that presumption about yourself and your wonderful capabilities. I'm just saying, I'm not talking about astrology, but I'm just saying causes and conditions are rotating in cycles in this so-called material realm that are impossible to trace. There are too many of them. You can't be sure of anything. So if you try to do that, then it takes us on what is a fool's errand, which is circular, lifetime after lifetime of trying to get better, trying not to get worse, and then building up all kinds of karmic interrelationships with all the other apparent individuals. So that's why I say, as I was stumbled into so many years ago, train your mind, find out who you are, and find out who you're not. Can take another question, especially here in Zendo, if there is one. Suzanne?
Can we get further from death?
From death? I don't know how, in what way are you asking that?
The best way that I can conceptualize that life is suffering is that we're always approaching death in some sense, but like change your diet and your health improves. I wonder if that is not that.
That's not good. Well, I think all of those are working at once. So we may find something that's going to extend our life. We may go another direction, which the life extension may get cut short by whatever causes and conditions, including an automobile accident or something like that. So many different things, or some disease coming out of nowhere that completely destroys our plan to live longer. Gets in the way of that. So fundamental understanding is life and death is an illusion. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, that the body mind doesn't decay and go down or get sick and die, and we feel sad if our friend or our relative or our child or someone passes away. But there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a mistake. If you're born, you're going to die. It's just the nature of this. But who you actually are has not been born. And so that's what the realization is about. To realize your true identity it's with this thing. It's with these forms and this form in different regard, different dynamics happening. But who you fundamentally are is already gone, or has never been born. Whatever works. And if none of that works for you, then don't worry about it. Just keep practicing. Just watch what moves, because eventually, if you watch what moves, you'll see what this is. There's no guarantee, but it's more likely that's going to happen than if you just work on a chinchilla ranch. Further questions? Excellent. Thank you so much.
We're at the back of our chant books, and like to remind everybody about the donation boxes that are in the hallway. As Nishikai said earlier, we appreciate and depend on your generous donations to help us continue these teachings and the work that we do for others and with others. Thank you.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji o san chi shi song mu sa mo ko sa mo ko ja ho ro mi. Three worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect SokukoJi Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.